Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Joe Killinger. On this episode, we're going to talk about how to find your motivation during challenging times. As we're going into a slowing economy, sometimes it's hard to find that motivation to take that next step, to really go out there and do everything you need to be doing to keep moving forward. And so I asked my friend Cameron Atlas to come on the show today. Cameron's been a keynote speaker, a motivational speaker. He coaches founders and executives on how to really find that motivation and how to succeed. So it should be a really good video for you. Make sure you check it out. And if you haven't done so, make sure you give it a like. And if you're new to this channel, my name is Joe Killinger, and I use this platform to bring on guests like Cameron to really come through and help us find our path forward to success. So we put a lot of good videos out, so make sure you check them out. And if you haven't done so, make sure you subscribe. All right, Cameron. So here we go. In challenging times, it's really hard to find your motivation. I've been through a few downturns in the real estate industry. It was tough. Finding that motivation, you really have to look inner, and that's what worked for me. Now that doesn't work for anybody. So I'm really excited to have you on today and have you really give us some tips and tricks on how we can stay motivated through this.
Yeah, definitely. I think the first thing, you touched on a great point about looking inner, and we'll definitely cover that. And it's going inside. There can be some external things you can look at, but the first thing you really want to understand is, like, where is it coming from in the first place? Because to me, motivation on its own tends to be a surface level piece that's pointing to something else. And so, for example, if you ask the question, right, why do I want to be motivated? So those of you tuning into this, why do you want to be motivated in the first place? And it might be, well, because during this challenging period, I don't really have a sense of direction, or I doubt my ability to really get through this. Maybe there's some doubt going on, or I know I've got to be more organized and efficient as a result of things tightening up. And so if you can get to the core of it, well, there's some answers that come out of those, and they tend to fall into a few different categories. Imagine like a Venn diagram, like three categories, right? 1, 2, 3. And that top one, right? If you don't have a clear sense of direction during this time, then what you're lacking is a clear sense of purpose, clarity, that being the first piece. And the reason why you need to have clarity during this is not only to be able to know where it is that you're going, but you ideally want to have a purpose that's bigger than the problems at hand. And anyone can do it. I find anyone can do it when it's easy, right? But it's when it's really challenging that is the making of somebody's character. And your ability to be able to get through those times, a huge part of that is your ability to have a purpose. That, just imagine a purpose bigger than your problems, right? And if you think about it, if your problems are bigger than the purpose that you have, you've got to work on building that to be a grander sense of purpose, to be able to come out the other side of that. And I can give some tips a little later on as we go through into practical pieces. Yeah. The second then is, okay, let's say you're doubting your ability to get through this, and you're really struggling to see a way out because of the changes in the economic environment. Well, with that, what you've got to be able to build in is a sense of courage. So we've got clarity first up, the second piece being courage. You've got to have the ability to be able to really step up and go for it. Again, anyone can do it when it's easy, but when it's really challenging, and your ability to still step up and go for something and challenge what's possible during this time. And that can come from asking bold questions. All right, what else could I do that could allow me to get through this? Yeah. So that courage component is so critically important, because without it, you're going to be playing small. And small is not even going to come close to cutting it when you're experiencing challenging times. Again, you might get away with it when things are good, but when things are really challenging and tightening up, that's where courage and people that are really bold, and when you attach that with a clear sense of purpose as well, you're on a pretty good track there. That third component then, go for it.
An upcycle for 11, 12 years in the real estate industry, right? So a lot of people that got into this industry have never seen a downturn. They've never seen it slow down. They're used to that phone ringing. They're used to putting out a couple pieces of content or one ad, and that's pulling. Now they're putting all this out there, not getting any responses. And, I think that eats you alive. You may not realize in the beginning, but next thing you know, it's harder to get up in the morning. You know, it's
Yep.
harder to pick up that phone to do your cold calls. It's harder to create content. And, you know, I advise these younger people to really talk to people that have been through a downturn, what worked for them. But you know, what are the first things you start to identify if maybe you don't even realize you're struggling with motivation? What do you think are the first things you need to be aware of that, hey, I might actually be struggling here?
Yeah. One of the things would be struggling to get up in the morning,
Yeah,
basic and
that
simple.
was me.
Right? You know, if you're
I
if
did
you're
not want to
struggling,
go to work.
right, there you go. If you're struggling to get out of bed or you're dreading the day, your self-talk that's going on is, oh, this just seems too hard.
Yeah.
Look at the self-talk that you have, because often it's one of the things that I'll share with clients often is you want to become your uncompromising best friend, right? If you're your own worst enemy, you're spending far too much time with your own self to not enjoy your own company. That's a massive point there. And so if you're your own worst enemy, you're kicking yourself when you're down, and when you're up, you're saying it's not going to last. If you're your best friend, you know, you're celebrating when you're up. You're saying, oh, it's okay when you're down. But uncompromising best friend is someone who says, come on, man,
Yeah.
you're better than this. Step up. You got this. And it's not putting yourself down. It's knowing that you're capable of a higher standard. And as a result, you're then following through, which is then that, you know, coming back to that what I was sharing about before with those three areas. That third one is commitment. It's being able to have the discipline, the be able to remove procrastination, be able to follow through with something even when you don't necessarily want to do it, right?
Yeah.
And so if that's going on for you, look at your self-talk first and foremost. And you know, you've got to be changing that. One of the things that I spoke with a friend just the other day, and I shared about how one of the things I get clients to do is when you first wake up in the morning, what are you excited about? Because if the problems are running over in your head, oh no, there's this going on, there's this going on. No, you want to get yourself into a really good space first and foremost. And then ideally follow that up with a certain action. I had a client recently, and you know, there was a lot of content that he was needing to produce for a program that he was building out. With that, the first thing in the day, for an hour every day while he was, you know, on the days he was working, was that specific task, was the creation of that content. Because it's stuff, hey, I don't really want to do this. But if you can get it done first thing in the day, so you start off with getting excited about the day, having some sense of purpose again. All right, this is what I'm excited about experiencing. And this is what it's going to allow me to achieve purpose-wise. And then you follow through with a specific action. Then you're starting to build momentum, because you know, the momentum builds on the other side of like not doing something, which then leads to like insane amounts of procrastination, which then is a self-fulfilling prophecy of not being motivated. And you're just setting yourself up for disappointment when you're focusing on the things that you're not wanting to experience.
Yeah, it can be a battle, but you know, most of the younger people, they just haven't seen that you just, you know, structure. I always push them on structure, right? If you structure and you follow that structure and you can count on that structure every day, that's what I'm finding has been working well for them.
Yeah. Having that structure it's incredibly important. And then it's important to be able to get the feedback as to whether that structure is working or not.
Yeah.
So, and this isn't about, it's the difference between external validation and external feedback. External validation is that I need the validation from external world in order to know that I'm enough. External feedback is that I'm experiencing the feedback to know whether I'm on track or not. Because you could easily do stuff and feel like, oh yeah, I'm getting some, you know, validation or whatever, or blindly going into it, just believing that it's going to work. And that's okay to an extent if you really believe that you're going to execute on something, and maybe it takes a bit of time to be able to get some traction. But at some stage, you've got to be taking the feedback on board as to whether it's, you know, allowing you to get the results that you want or not, especially when things change. Because as you said earlier, you know, putting out a piece of content and it was really hitting. Now it's not. Okay, well, the external feedback is that that's changed. And so now it's requiring X amount, whereas before it was the Y amount. Yeah. And so that feedback, the better you can be asking great quality questions during this time. One of the things that I get clients to do is we have these 4 questions, and it's asked on a regular basis. what worked, what didn't, what am I going to do about it, and then what help do I need? Because if you're able to ask those over and over again, okay, what worked? And then because that way you're celebrating the wins, you're celebrating what you've done. Because if it's all about what's not working, motivation is going to drop down again because it's, man, nothing's working. Yeah. And the self-talk, and then all of a sudden it's the self-repeating cycle again. Instead, if we can, okay, this is what's working well, great. Let's celebrate that. Now, let's look at what's not working. What didn't work? What mistakes did I make?
Yeah.
The most important thing then is, what am I actually going to do about it? Because you can make mistakes all you like, but and it's good to make those mistakes, but it's only good to make those mistakes if you actually learn from those mistakes. Otherwise, you're just repeating the same thing over and over again. We know that's the definition of insanity, right? And so being able to ask yourself then, and if you've got, whether it's yourself or you've got a team, what you want to be then determining is, how well does what I'm going to do differently over this next week, day, week, month, year, align with the outcome that I'm actually wanting to experience? Because just taking a different action for the sake of taking a different action, like there's no strategy behind that. You ask a follow-up question of, okay, so I'm going to take that action over this next week. What's the outcome that I expect to see as a result of that action being taken? And then you can assess that after the week and say, did that occur? Mm-hmm. If it did, we continue on. Or if it hit somewhat the mark, maybe there's another tweak that I could make and then move forward. But if it didn't, then you're just taking action for the sake of taking action. And that again can lead to lower motivation, because you go, man, like I'm trying everything here. I did this, I did this, I did that, I did this. And this links up with, your ability to be able to, those three things that I mentioned before with that Venn diagram. You imagine clarity and courage without commitment to following through, which is these questions live in this category here. You'll end up chasing the next shiny thing. Right? Yeah. Oh, because I want to go do this, and now I'm going to go do this. And you've got the courage to go and do it. Rock on. But if you haven't got the commitment to seeing it through and asking great quality questions to determine whether you're on track or off track, when it gets boring and monotonous, when you just got to keep executing over and over and over again and making 1% tweaks, 0.5% tweaks here and there, if you're missing that, then you're going to end up chasing things, and you're going to be feeling like you're doing so much, but not generating the results that you want. And that's then going to lead to the lowering of motivation. If you have the second part there of courage and commitment, but you don't have the sense of clarity, what will tend to happen is you'll make poor decisions, because the sense of clarity isn't there. So you're not able to line back up to the sense of purpose. Then you'll make the poor decisions because they're not attached to your purpose, not attached to the reason why you're there doing things in the first place. And then what will often happen as well is that you'll end up spending more time doing those things in those poor decisions, because imagine like a ship, right? And you're going in this direction. The amount of energy it takes to move that back around is huge. It's huge. You've seen like the videos of like ships crashing into stuff, right? Because it takes so much to be able to do that. But if you're able to be asking the questions over and over, to be able to maybe just tweak 1%, 2%, 3% here, because you've got these three working together, all of a sudden you're making better decisions, because it's, again, lining back up to the outcome that you're aiming to achieve. And that final piece is, if we have commitment and clarity, but you don't have a sense of courage, especially during this time, you're going to know that you deep down are capable of so much more. But because you don't have the courage there, you can have, the biggest purpose in the world, and you could even be following through with certain pieces of that. But you can be, if you're disciplined there, you'll still get some results. Yeah. But again, you'll know deep down, and I've had this with clients over and over again, you're capable of so much more, and that can reduce motivation as well, because it becomes boring. It becomes monotonous. Like,
same thing. Yeah.
Right. And so again, this comes back full circle, is those of you listening into this, is get to the core as to why the motivation has dropped in the first place. Because what I've found over years of doing this for myself and with clients as well, is that if you can get to the core of it and then utilize some of these tactics on top of that, it becomes long-term sustainable change, rather than just short-lived tactic that lasts for a month or two and then you're back to the way it was before.
Yeah, it's, You see in the real estate industry, we have 14 agents in our company right now, actually 15 agents in our company. And when somebody's struggling, I sit down and say, "Oh, are you doing everything that we tell you to do?" Yes. I said, "Okay, walk me through what you're doing." They're doing their cold calls. Okay, yes, I'm doing about 50 a day. All right, you need to put that should be around 75 to 80. Are you doing your block program? Are you doing an email program? No. So they're not doing everything. So they've really got to be honest with themselves first, right? You've really got to be honest with yourself.
Yeah, you really do. And
Yeah.
and this is you raised a great point there where you want to pinpoint where it is that you're falling short and where you've got to be taking responsibility for this.
Yeah.
No one's coming to rescue you. No one's coming to save you during this
Who's
time.
going to do it for you?
Right? Those who take responsibility are those that get to create the change around a situation. Those who blame, those who remove the responsibility for themselves are the ones that end up staying with the pain of the situation. And so by taking responsibility and say, okay, how have I created this? Those exact pieces, whether you're working with a team and you're asking those questions of your agents or you're asking it of yourself, is being able to pinpoint, again, what is it that I need to be doing to get the outcomes that I'm shooting for? Am I actually doing those things? And getting brutally honest with yourself. And then that comes back to being your uncompromising best friend of, hey man, you know you're capable of more of this. You know that it takes more than this. And this goes back to, if you're just starting out in the industry or you haven't been through a downturn, what you shared before, Joe, go and talk with someone who has been. What did it take? Ask a question. This is where questions are so important and so powerful. Ask the right type of questions. The quality of your questions determine the quality of your answers. Okay. And so the quality of your question here, an example would be, what did it take for you to get through this last downturn? How many calls were you making? Yeah. How many emails were you sending out? How many pieces of content? Now, it might have changed a bit since then, but you can at least get some baseline, some foundational level of action that needs to be taken during this time. Go and execute that and then build upon from that, right? So then you're not having to fully reinvent the wheel, but you are taking brutal responsibility for your results and your non-results.
Yeah, I think it's key that you say what worked best for you, because you're not going to be the same as them. And so you're going to want to ask a good number of people. Probably it needs to be in your same asset class. This downturn is going to be different than the last one. So you've really just got to do ask a lot of questions and do more listening. We've been able to sell the last several years, but now it's time to step back and listen to what people are actually saying instead of pushing a product or a property on them. And actually doing the listening that every good salesperson should know how to do.
Totally agree. You want to be removing the things that are not working.
Yeah.
And as you uncover these and understand what is going to work for you, is understanding what you're not going to do is so important, because there's a bunch of things that you could do. And often those things, especially if you're just there's procrastination coming in, which is often linked in with that motivation piece. So I'm struggling to be motivated, so I think I'll go and walk the dog, or I'll go and get the groceries. I'll do anything that aside from making those calls that I need to make. It's because we don't feel comfortable doing those things.
Yeah.
And you want to be removing out anything that, again, is not getting you the results you want. Remove the noise. That gives you more time to be able to dedicate towards the things that you are needing to do. And then they've got to become a must. And that comes from linking back up to a sense of purpose. That comes from building the momentum throughout the day. It comes from breaking those things down. It comes from, again, removing the noise so that you can see, okay, I know I've got to do this. And so, those, they're just, some of the pieces. And what you mentioned before around, again, talking with other people. I remember it's a funny example. It's different, but it's connected to what we're talking about here. Back in late 2016, I sold everything that I owned and went on this journey around the world, and it was an incredible experience. The last big things that were sold was my television, my sofa, and the entertainment unit that the television was on. And they sold on the Friday afternoon, and I got a message from the person, hey, can we come tomorrow and pick them up? and I don't watch much TV at all. But all of a sudden, I didn't want to get rid of the TV. All of a sudden, the reason was like, it was, man, this is actually going to happen now.
Yeah.
So it became oh no, this is real. And it was now not something that I said, oh yeah, I want to do this, but it's now happening. And I've got to find the courage, and talking about it before, I've got to find the courage to actually let go of this final piece, which then allows me to move into this next phase. Yeah. And what I ended up doing, I ended up binge watching 3 movies in a row. Mm-hmm. All right. It was Hector and the Search for Happiness. It was A Secret Life of Walter Mitty, and it was Into the Wild. 3 adventure type of movies. Right, yeah. And at the end, I go like, take the TV, take the saver. I don't need it. Like, I'm out there. Right? That's that being inspired by external sources. Yes, look internally. Yes, find the inspiration internally. Take responsibility internally. But make sure you're having conversations with people in the industry as to what worked before, but also what's happening now. Make sure that you've got a really strong network around you. I know I continue to do that. I have some incredible people in my life. Like, I've been doing this, around helping people to transform their lives, become greater versions of themselves, overcome the challenges that they're experiencing to become more remarkable versions of themselves. And I've been doing that for myself for the last 12, 13 years. Every single month, I have multiple conversations with multiple close friends of mine, and we are calling each other out on this stuff. All right. What patterns am I seeing? I had one just 3 weeks ago, and it led to a massive breakthrough for myself. I just didn't see it. All right. And so there are certain things that you'll be able to figure out on your own. And there are certain things that you need to figure out with somebody, you'll end up figuring out with somebody else. That can be as simple as a conversation. It can be a mentor. It can be a coach. It can be a book. It can be a video. It can be, continue ensuring that you're consuming the content and getting the education that you need to be able to move through this in a really empowered way. And that then will allow you to get the most out of yourself as well.
Yeah, you got to leave the ego at the door, right? You've got to be willing to let people to tell you what you're doing right now. I'm fortunate that I've got a good number of people around me that it's not a problem. It's, and even on YouTube, when I put these videos out, people say, hey, I would like to see you do this. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, you're right. More questions, less questions. I've learned a lot from people on YouTube, but it's just, or any of the other social networks, it's just people, you got to listen to the advice. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, but listen to it all.
Yep. That's where, again, coming back to the external feedback, right? Yeah. You want to be asking yourself, is this feedback warranted? Mm-hmm. Is this feedback warranted? Second question, because the first one could be no, because they don't know me and they don't know this. That could just be a defense mechanism. All right. So ask yourself, is there any validity to this? Mm-hmm. And often if there's some kind of reaction that you have to the feedback that comes in, there's often something there.
Yeah, I know. There's often something there. Well, shit. Why didn't I think of that? Because it's just something that is usually pretty simple. Yeah. But we're so focused on what we're doing that we're not really, it's hard to think about everything. And listening is a key, and staying focused. You see with a lot of real estate agents that this isn't working when, you've seen that where they've got the meme with a guy in a tunnel and one guy is 2 more axe picks and he's going to be through. And then the other guy, the other guy that's through, but the guy that's almost through turns around, walks away. You've got to stay focused and keep doing what you're doing. And then when the next shiny object comes along and takes you off your path, refer it out, do something else, and stay on your path. And I see so many young people right now. I've seen it the last couple of weeks with a couple of agents, and I'm like, but that's not what you do. You got to stay building your business. And so it's good. But how often, Cameron, do you sit down and analyze what you've been doing, your progress? Do you do it, daily, weekly, monthly?
Yeah, all of the above. So the rhythms I tend to use is daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly. And so it just works so well because the rhythms work so well with the way that we've got time structured in our lives. Yeah. Each day you finish up the day of work, which gives you the opportunity to reflect. It gives you the opportunity to lock in reference points about how you've done well. It gives you the opportunity to plan out what's next for what's coming up for the following day, what you're going to get done first up. the next morning is the ability to be able to, again, get excited about what it is that you've got going on for the day, execute on that first task and build the momentum. Again, reflect at the end of the day. At the end of the week, there can be questions like, what did I learn? Again, those 4 questions: what worked, what didn't, what am I going to do about it? What do I need help with? Same on the monthly basis. On the quarterly basis, then it is making sure that you've got your 90-day projects goals mapped out, the objectives that you're going to achieve for that. Because that, again, you've got 4 of those each year, right? So quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. And then you just repeat over and over and over again. And then you're able to map out, I would suggest, for those, again, aiming to have that motivation, you want to have, at the very least, an understanding as to, yes, what you're going to do over the next quarter. How does that link into a 12-month objectives that you have? What I love to do with clients and my own self as well is theme up the year. The year for me this year was the year of laser focus, because, for me, it was on the speaking side, adding a new instrument to the talks that I give. So it's not just the grand piano on stage, but also the guitar. It was 5 hours a day, every single day for 365 days. And that was brutal. But it was my year of laser focus, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason I love theming it up so much is because you can look on and just ask yourself the question, am I being laser focused right now? Or am I focused on growth right now? Am I focused on building relationships? Whatever your theme is for the year, I really love to do that. It's just a simple way to be able to reflect at a really high level and then drill down if need be. But have those 12-month objectives then, ideally, at least 5 to 7 key things that you're going to do. Make sure they're objective rather than subjective as well, because subjective can be more in the longer term, 3, 5, 10, 20 years, because the reality is things change. But at the very least, I would then have somewhere between a 3 and 5 year vision that you have for yourself that you're excited about. If you're not excited about that, you are going to be relying on motivation way too much. And motivation at the end of the day is a push type energy. You've got to push yourself to make those calls, push yourself to go to the gym, push yourself to do those things. There's only a certain amount of pushing you can do before you end up burning out. Whereas if you're feeling inspired, which is from the vision, it's almost like you're being pulled along. Yeah. And there's motivation that'll come in at certain times because there's just stuff that has to get done. And that's where discipline comes in that commitment and that ongoing focus. But if you have to rely on that over and over again in the absence of a sense of purpose, you're setting yourself up for some really challenging times, especially when things get really challenging, which is, where we might be heading.
Yeah. Where I found my most motivation is when I started having success. And just little baby steps, and then they turned into bigger steps. And then next thing you know, I've got some great clients that referrals are coming in, but it was just the hard work I'd put in. So, well, I know we're getting kind of long. So, Cameron, why don't you give us, how do we contact you?
Yeah, CameronAtlas.com is the site. And then on the social handles, it's Cameron Atlas as well. So Insta, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, all of those good ones.
Everybody, make sure you connect. And Cameron, thank you for coming on today. We went a lot longer than we were planning, but I think it was just such great information for everybody.
Absolute pleasure. Great to be here.
Right. Thank you. And for those of you watching, make sure you give us a like. And if you haven't done so, make sure you subscribe. And I'll see you again soon.